Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the stories. The perpetual hum of the Cerulean Dreams engines was the lullaby of my life, a deep thrumming beneath my feet that was as familiar as my own heartbeat. For 16 weeks this had been my world, a cramped cabin, a shared mess hall, and the endless, indifferent expanse of the Pacific. I am Dr. Eris Thorne, marine geophysicist, and my current obsession was a recently charted abyssal trench, a jagged scar in the seafloor we'd christened the Hadal Scar. It was deeper than Everest is tall, a geological anomaly that promised new frontiers in extremophile biology and plate tectonics. Or so I told myself. In truth, I was chasing the ghost of a hunch, a subtle perturbation in previous satellite gravity data that suggested something unusual, something too dense, too organized for a natural formation. My colleagues, bless their pragmatic hearts, humored me. Dr. Lena Hansen, the chief biologist, teased me about my conspiracy theories of geological perfection. Captain Davies, a man whose skin was weathered into a permanent squint, simply grunted and approved the extended survey time. He trusted my instincts, a trust I felt a growing burden to repay. We were 3 weeks into the deepwater bathymetric survey, sending our AUVS autonomous underwater vehicles like blind metal fish into the crushing darkness. Day in and day out, the sonar screens displayed the familiar undulating curves of the trench walls, the occasional isolated seamount, the featureless plains of sediment. It was monotonous, exacting work, punctuated by the thrill of discovering a new species or mapping a previously unknown fault line. But on the 21st day, the monotony shattered. It was 300, my watch. The air in the control room was thick with the scent of stale coffee and ozone. I was idly watching the real-time sonar feed from OV-3, affectionately named the Seeker, as it glided along the Hadal Scar's floor, some 10,800 meters beneath us. The display, usually a riot of blues and greens depicting depth contours, suddenly flickered. A sharp, almost perfectly linear anomaly appeared. I frowned, leaning closer. Equipment glitch, sensor noise. This wasn't like the usual scatter. I ran a quick diagnostic, all systems green. I zoomed in, adjusting the contrast. The anomaly resolved itself into a series of incredibly precise, almost orthogonal angles. Not a curve, not a ripple, but a succession of straight lines meeting at impossible corners. My heart gave an involuntary lurch. This wasn't noise, this was structure. I tried to dismiss it. A geological quirk, perhaps. An unusual mineral deposit, a complex series of fault lines forming a perfect grid. But the data fought my rationalizations. The edges were too sharp, the angles too exact, the pattern too deliberate. It was like someone had dropped a monumental, geometric jigsaw puzzle onto the seafloor. I saved the data, marked the coordinates, and then, against my better judgment, retasked the Seeker to do a tighter, higher resolution pass over the area. My hands trembled slightly as I typed the commands. This wasn't just a hunch anymore. This was a tremor on the fault line of everything I understood about my world. Morning arrived with the same relentless Pacific sun, but the mood in the control room was different. Lena, typically effervescent, sat hunched over her microscope, occasionally glancing at the main screen where my discovery was now prominently displayed. Captain Davies, usually unflappable, rubbed his chin, his gaze distant. "Eris," he said, his voice unusually soft, "explain this to me again in layman's terms." I projected the 3D rendering. "Captain, at roughly 10,832 meters depth, we have detected a series of formations that exhibit unnatural regularity. They're too straight, too angular, too large to be geological. We're talking structures that span kilometers, forming a grid-like pattern with individual components rising hundreds of meters from the seabed." "Ice crystals," Lena offered, ever the biologist, though her tone lacked conviction. "Deep-sea hydrothermal vents sometimes produce fantastic crystalline forms, given the right pressure and temperature." "Not like this, Lena," I countered, shaking my head. "The sheer scale, for one, and the perfect right angles. The way the lines intersect with such precision, it defies natural formation. There's no known geological process, no mineral deposition that could create something like this." A tense silence fell. The implication hung heavy in the air, unspoken but understood. Artificial. But artificial by whom? At nearly 11 kilometers depth, in a trench discovered only a few years ago, cut off from sunlight and known life, it was absurd. It was impossible, yet the data was undeniable. "Send in the Watcher," Captain Davies finally ordered, referring to our high-resolution, remotely operated vehicle, equipped with cutting-edge sonar, LiDAR, and powerful cameras. "Let's get some visual confirmation." The Watcher's descent was agonizingly slow. Each meter down felt like a battle against the crushing pressure. The team gathered silently in the control room, eyes fixed on the main screen, a collective breath held. Hours passed, the depth counter climbed, 5,000 meters, 7,000, 9,000, and then, finally, the seafloor came into view. At first, it was just the expected abyssal plain. Flat, desolate, littered with the occasional volcanic rock or the ghostly remains of a long-dead organism. Then, the LiDAR began to paint a more detailed picture, confirming the sonar's geometry. And then the camera lights, two powerful beams cutting through the eternal night, caught something. A wall, a sheer, dark, featureless wall rising vertically from the seabed. It was vast, impossibly smooth, and so utterly black it seemed to absorb the light rather than reflect it. My breath hitched. This was no rock formation. This was construction. As the watcher moved, more structures came into view, emerging from the gloom like monstrous, minimalist architecture. Pillars, vast plates intersecting at angles that suggested a sprawling, submerged city. But a city built for what? There were no windows, no doors, no discernible entrances. Just monolithic, geometric forms made of a material that seemed to drink the light. They were ancient somehow, but pristine, untouched by erosion or sediment. As if they had been placed there yesterday or a million years ago, and time had simply forgotten to touch them. "My God," Lena whispered, her usual scientific detachment replaced by sheer awe, tinged with something else, fear. I felt it too, a primal dread deep in my gut. This wasn't merely a discovery, it was a violation, a glimpse behind a veil that perhaps should have remained drawn. The structures were so utterly alien, so devoid of any recognizable purpose, that they felt less like ruins and more like some incomprehensible monument to an unknown horror. For days, the Cerulean Dream became an extension of my obsessive mind. I replayed the Watcher's footage countless times, zooming in, panning out, searching for any detail, any clue. The structures were made of a material unlike anything I knew. It was dense, smooth, and seemed to have a faint, internal luminescence that flickered like dying embers, only visible when the Watcher's lights were at their weakest. Sometimes, when a current stirred the fine sediment, I thought I saw patterns shifting on their surfaces, like ripples on water, but when I focused, they vanished. Optical illusion, or something else. The crew began to notice my change. I slept less, ate little. My cabin became a warren of charts, printouts, and frantic annotations. The easy camaraderie of the vessel dissolved, replaced by a subtle unease. Whispers followed me down the corridors. Dr. Thorne's lost it, the deep's getting to him. I was losing it in a way. The structures consumed my thoughts, waking and sleeping. The rational part of me screamed for explanations. Unknown geological process, highly advanced pre-human civilization, ridiculous, given the depth and antiquity, or the most unsettling, alien. But none of these theories fit perfectly. They were too other. I argued for a manned descent. Captain Davies was initially resistant. "Aris, we have enough data. We've confirmed the anomaly. We can send a full report, deploy more sophisticated ROVs on the next expedition." A man dive into an unknown structure at this depth is an unnecessary risk. "Unnecessary," I retorted, my voice sharper than I intended. "Captain, this is the most significant discovery in the history of oceanography. This isn't just a rock, it's something beyond our understanding. We have to get closer, we have to see it with our own eyes." Lena, surprisingly, backed me up. "He's right, Captain. The human eye, the human mind, can perceive nuances that our sensors might miss. We need to collect physical samples. We need to measure the material properties, search for any signs of biological interaction or anything." Her voice trailed off, a hint of the same fear in her eyes that I felt churning in my stomach. Davies sighed, rubbing his temples. The Abyss Explorer, our two-person deep-sea submersible, was rated for these depths. It was the pride of our vessel, a marvel of engineering. But it was also a coffin suspended by a thread, a single point of failure away from being crushed into oblivion. He knew the risks, we all did, but the lure of the unknown, the sheer audacity of the discovery, was a powerful current pulling us all in. He finally conceded with strict conditions. I would be the primary observer. Dr. Ben Carter, our seasoned submersible pilot, would be at the controls. No sampling until a full visual survey was complete. And if anything at all, felt wrong, they were to ascend immediately. The day of the dive, the ocean was calm, a vast, placid blue that belied the churning chaos beneath. Preparing for the descent was a ritual of precision and controlled anxiety. Checking life support, communication systems, power reserves, manipulator arms, ballast tanks. Every bolt, every gauge, every seal was meticulously inspected. Ben, a taciturn man whose calm demeanor was legendary, went through the pre-dive checks with his usual methodical efficiency. I, on the other hand, was a bundle of nerves, a potent mix of professional excitement and raw, existential dread. I felt like a man about to open Pandora's box, knowing full well what might escape. We sealed the hatch. The world outside disappeared, replaced by the cramped, spherical confines of the submersible's cabin. The air was cool, smelling faintly of ozone and recycled oxygen. Ben gave the final thumbs up to the surface crew. Abyss Explorer to Cerulean Dream, all systems nominal, ready for deployment. Cerulean Dream to Abyss Explorer, Godspeed, gentlemen. Captain Davies' voice crackled over the intercom, a rare note of genuine concern in his tone. The sub was released, a faint lurch, a groan of metal, and then we began our descent. The initial meters were a hazy blue, light filtering down from the surface. Then the blue deepened, turning to indigo, then black. Total absolute black. The sub's external lights were activated, two powerful beams cutting through the void, revealing only the endless curtain of water, teeming with bioluminescent specks that drifted past like ghostly stars. The pressure mounted, a silent, implacable force that we could feel in the subtle groaning of the sub's hull, the low hum of the life support systems. The outside temperature plummeted to near freezing. Inside, the cabin remained stable, but I shivered nonetheless, a cold that seemed to originate from within. Approaching target area, Ben announced, his voice calm, mechanical. Sonar picking up primary structures. Bearing 0-30, range 200 meters. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pressed my face against the viewport, straining my eyes against the darkness, even though I knew I wouldn't see anything yet. The light from our sub was a meager pencil beam in an ocean of shadow, and then a flicker. A colossal form began to resolve itself from the inky blackness. It wasn't a wall this time, but a gigantic, geometric pillar, rising from the seabed like a dark, impossible obelisk. It was sheer, utterly smooth, absorbing the light from our sub, making it seem even blacker, a void within the void. "My God," I whispered again, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. "It's even bigger than the scans indicated." Ben nodded silently, maneuvering the sub closer, slowly, respectfully, as if approaching a sleeping leviathan. The pillar seemed to stretch upwards endlessly, disappearing into the darkness above. We edged around it, our light sweeping its surface. No texture, no discernible features, just that impossible smoothness. And then, as our lights grazed a corner, I saw it again. The faint internal luminescence, like a breath, a pulse, deep within the material itself. It was almost imperceptible, a trick of the light, but it was there, a fleeting, shimmering dance of faint, unearthly light. "Ben," I urged, my voice tight. "Closer, can we get closer to that corner?" He nodded, nudging the controls. As we drew nearer, the faint patterns became more pronounced, not shimmering light, but movement. Something flowed just beneath the surface, complex geometric patterns shifting and reconfiguring themselves with a silent, terrifying fluidity. Like watching a living mural of pure mathematics, but one whose calculations were beyond human comprehension. My hand instinctively reached for the hydrophone controls. I needed sound, something to ground me in the scientific. I flipped the switch. The cabin was filled with a low, rhythmic thrumming. Not the hum of our sub, but a deep, resonant pulsation that seemed to emanate from the very fabric of the ocean around us. It wasn't mechanical, nor biological. It was resonant. Like a heartbeat, but one that beat once every century or millennium. "Did you hear that?" I asked, turning to Ben. He was staring at the pillar, his face pale, his eyes wide. It's in my bones, Eris. "I feel it in my skull." He was right. It wasn't just auditory, it was somatic. A vibration that resonated with the very structure of our bodies, a pressure that wasn't physical but internal, deep within my brain. It was subtly disorienting, like the world was subtly out of sync. We spent another hour circling the structures, mapping their extent, taking hundreds of high-resolution photographs. The deeper we explored, the more vast and intricate the complex became. It wasn't just pillars, there were archways, impossible bridges connecting colossal, flat plates. It was a city, yes, but a city built for beings that had no need for light, for air, for anything we understood as life. As we navigated a particularly narrow canyon formed by two towering structures, the sub's light seemed to dim, swallowed by the unnatural blackness of the material. The rhythmic thrumming intensified, pressing in on us, and I started hearing faint whispers in the background noise, just at the edge of comprehension. Not words, not language, but a cacophony of sound that hinted at information, at purpose, at something vast and ancient attempting to communicate. My mind reeled, trying to grasp meaning from the impossible. "Eris," Ben's voice was strained, "I'm getting some anomalies on the power grid, and comms are breaking up." I looked at the instruments. Sure enough, the power readings were flickering. The comms link to the surface was intermittent, crackling with static. This was too deep for random interference. This was them. "We need to ascend," Ben stated, his voice firm, tinged with urgency. Now I wanted to protest, to beg for more time. I felt an irresistible pull, a deep curiosity that clawed at my soul, urging me to go deeper, to find an entrance, to understand. But the terror in Ben's eyes and the growing, unbearable pressure in my own skull snapped me back to reality. "Agreed," I croaked. "Ascend." The journey back to the surface was a blur of mounting anxiety. The rhythmic thrumming intensified with every meter we gained, a relentless beat that pounded against my eardrums, echoing in my skull. The whispers became clearer, though still nonsensical, a chorus of alien voices screaming from the abyssal void. I pressed my hands against my ears, trying to block them out, but they were inside me. When we finally surfaced, the sun was setting, painting the sky in fiery hues that felt almost blasphemous after the eternal night we had just endured. The crew rushed to help us out of the submersible. My legs felt like jelly, my mind a jumbled mess of fragmented images and unheard whispers. "Aris, Ben, are you all right?" Captain Davies demanded, his face etched with concern. Ben, usually composed, looked like he had aged 10 years. He stumbled out, eyes wide and unfocused. "Captain, it's not natural, it's alive." I could only nod mute as the engineers ran diagnostics on the sub. The comm system was fried, the sonar array completely offline, and several auxiliary power cells were drained to dangerous levels. Unexplained, impossible. Back in my cabin, I tried to write my report, but the words wouldn't come. Every time I tried to describe the structures, my hands shook. The faint, internal luminescence, the shifting patterns, the resonant thrumming, they were burned into my retinas, echoing in my mind. The whispers were still there, a constant, low murmur just beyond the threshold of my hearing, a secret language the ocean had kept from us. I started seeing them everywhere. The impossible angles in the lines of the ship's bulkhead, the shifting patterns in the ripples on my coffee. Sleep offered no escape. The structures haunted my dreams, vast and infinite, expanding into cosmic landscapes of pure, terrifying geometry. I was no longer an observer, I was inside them, part of them, understanding the impossible equations that governed their existence. And in those dreams, I heard the whispers turn into a name, my name, called from the abyss. My colleagues grew increasingly wary. Lena tried to talk to me, her voice gentle, concerned. "Aris, you need rest, you're exhausted, this is affecting you." "Affecting me?" I laughed, a hollow, rasping sound. "Lena, it's changing me. I understand things now, the patterns, the geometry, it's all connected." She recoiled slightly, her eyes widening. I knew what she saw, a man unraveling, succumbing to the pressure of the deep, or perhaps something far worse. The ship itself seemed to react to my deteriorating state. Lights flickered erratically in the mess hall. Data logs were corrupted with strange, geometric symbols that mimicked the structures. One night, a junior technician swore he saw a shadow, impossibly deep and angular, flit across the control room screen when no one was there. Captain Davies tried to maintain order, but even his stoicism was cracking. The crew was restless, afraid. Many wanted to turn back, but I couldn't. The call from the deep was too strong, a siren song that resonated with every beat of my heart, every thought in my mind. It wasn't merely curiosity now, it was an irresistible compulsion, a yearning to return, to immerse myself in the profound, alien wisdom of the structures. They weren't just objects. They were vast, ancient entities, and they were waiting for me. I began to draw, not scientific diagrams, but intricate, impossible geometries, fractal patterns that curved and twisted in ways that defied Euclidean space. They were depictions of my dreams, visions of the true nature of the structures, of the boundless, cold consciousness that resided within them. My hands moved without conscious thought, guided by an unseen force. One evening, as the ship rode the swells of a storm-tossed sea, the rhythmic thrumming from the deep intensified. It was no longer a subtle vibration. It was a deafening roar in my ears, drowning out all other sound. The whispers coalesced into a single, undeniable command: return. I knew what I had to do. I waited until the dead of night, when the storm raged and most of the crew were asleep or hunkered down, trying to weather the tempest. I made my way to the submersible bay. The Abyss Explorer sat there, dark and silent, a gleaming metallic sphere waiting. My heart pounded, but not with fear, with exhilaration. I was going home. I knew the procedures, the overrides. It wasn't hard to disable the security systems, to bypass the protocols. The sub's internal lights flickered to life as I powered it up. The familiar hum of the life support system was a welcome sound, a comforting prelude to the journey ahead. I sealed the hatch, the heavy clunk echoing in the confined space. "Cerulean Dream, this is Abyss Explorer, divert course, I'm going down." I spoke into the comms, knowing full well it was pointless. They wouldn't answer. The storm, the sabotage, I had cut the lines, literally and figuratively. I was alone and profoundly, terribly at peace with it. The sub was deployed into the churning, storm-ravaged waters. The surface light was swallowed immediately by the abyssal black. Down I went, faster this time, ignoring the warnings flashing on the console, pushing the sub to its limits. The pressure mounted, the sub groaned, but I felt nothing but an escalating sense of joy. The rhythmic thrumming, the whispers, they were a symphony now, welcoming me, guiding me. The structures emerged from the darkness not as monolithic pillars, but as vast, swirling tapestries of pure, shimmering energy, their impossible geometries twisting and reforming with every beat of the abyssal heart. I could see them clearly now, not through the viewport, but with my mind's eye, with a new, horrifying clarity. I knew their purpose. They were not monuments, not cities. They were a nexus, a gateway of vast, alien consciousness that had slept for eons, stirred by our intrusion, and now, finally, beckoned one of its own. I brought the Abyss Explorer to rest in a small cavern formed by two impossibly sharp angles. The light from the sub was completely absorbed, leaving me in absolute darkness, but I saw more clearly than ever before. The internal patterns of the structures glowed, bathed in an unearthly luminescence that pulsed in sync with the thrumming. The hull groaned not from external pressure but from something else, a resonance. The structures were calling to the sub, to me. They were breaking down the barriers between worlds, between consciousnesses. I felt my own form dissolving, my thoughts expanding, merging with the vast, cold awareness that surrounded me. A final, fragmented message, automatically triggered by the sub's failing systems, began to transmit. I spoke into the recording, my voice no longer my own, but a chorus of whispers of ancient, echoing knowledge. They are not built, they are. Vast infinite, a consciousness woven from pure geometry, from cosmic dust. They have slept, but now they awaken, and I understand the patterns, the truth, not life as we know it, but being I am merging, becoming the knowledge, the infinite cold. Oh, the beautiful, terrifying truth. The last sounds were not words, but a series of resonant tones, geometric clicks, and then silence. A final, absolute silence. On the surface, the cerulean dream found only a faint, garbled distress signal, then nothing. Captain Davies reported a catastrophic failure, a loss of the submersible and its crew, swallowed by the Hadal Scar. But the crew, those who had seen my decline, who had heard the whispers, who had felt the subtle, pervasive wrongness, knew better. They knew I hadn't been lost, I had been taken. Or perhaps I had simply found my way home. To this day, if you listen closely, when the Pacific is calm and the stars are out, some sailors swear you can hear it, a faint, rhythmic thrumming, deep beneath the waves, a cold, impossible heartbeat resonating from the abyss, waiting for another curious mind to stumble upon its impossible truth.